Welcome to the Business Legends Podcast, where we interview business leaders and entrepreneurs so that our listeners can learn from their successes, pump up their own inspiration, and learn the motives behind the people that make change happen. I'm the host of the show, Reese Arlen, along with my co-host, Christian Webb. Say something.
Are you ever not going to read that?
Well, I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult. We changed the intro like 5 episodes ago, and I did 45 without it.
You're doing great, man. You're doing great.
Thank you so much. We're accompanied by Chris Dennis with eFix Everything, eFix Management Corp, eFix Housing Solutions, eFix Taking Over the Earth. Chris, thank you for joining us this morning.
Look, I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited all the energy that's in the room today. So
Yeah. Before the show, we were talking about so the way that Christian gets me going before a podcast, he says something just to like irritate me a little bit, just so that I start moving a little faster, and that's kind of like the coffee activation ceremony, you know. Like I have to do a little bit. But enough about us. Tell us all about the eFix enterprise at this point.
Man, where do I start? I'll tell you. I'll say this. The key thing of how eFix housing came apart and migrated over into the commercial side with eFix Development Corp. Was I was sitting in a cubicle at Bank of America. I was a senior exec for 13 years at Bank of America, and I was in a cubicle one day and I realized
where dreams start. Anyway,
hey, look, that's my logo. Think big, dream big, be big.
Hey, you don't look a day over 30. How are you already executive?
Yeah, what are you talking about? How old are you?
Look, I started early, man. I started early. Came from a little small town, migrated into technology, got to Bank of America, met a great guy in the alleyway, and he hired me.
Wow. At 8 years old.
Look.
Yeah.
And so I'm at the bank, and I'm sitting there, and something happened, and I'm running the technology for the trading floor, and one day all of my partners from out of town came to Charlotte, and they were all coming down, and on the way to Charlotte, there was an accident on 85. They got out of the airport, and the taxi driver was driving them up 85, came down Graham Street, and turned through a little neighborhood. And the taxi driver told him, I said, you think crime in those places are bad, but this neighborhood was labeled as a top 25 most dangerous neighborhood living in America.
Wow.
So you need to lock your doors and slide into the middle of the seats. These guys from New York, Chicago, and Atlanta, and they all did it. So they get to the office, and we're at the office, and I'm drawing on a chalkboard, getting ready for the meeting. And one of the guys turns and, as the icebreaker, starts telling the story about sliding the seats and locking the doors. And he says, so Chris, where do you live? And I thought for a second. Lockwood, that's the neighborhood I live in. They're talking about.
Wow.
Oh, no.
Let that sink in. I'm telling my entire team has come to Charlotte, and they're sitting here, and we're talking about the top 25 most dangerous neighborhood, which is the neighborhood I live in. And now I'm leading this meeting, and I've got to tell the truth.
Yeah.
I think any great business starts off with a mission of your why, and then also overcoming the truth that you live in and that you have to narrate. Because for me, that room that I was sitting in was 98% Caucasian and 1% Afro-American. The neighborhood they were talking about was 98% Afro-American and 98% Afro-American and about 2% other. And when I looked at that neighborhood, I knew that day I had to tell the truth, but also I had to make an impact. And within a year or so, I left the bank, and it wasn't because of money. Bank of America was treating me well. But after going to Queens to get my MBA, I realized what I valued the most was making an impact. And it started off by rebuilding communities. And that was my slogan. I wanted to go in and build dreams by rebuilding communities. And so that's how I got into eFix housing.
That's so incredible. So, not that I want to make you relive such an experience, but I feel like it's important for everybody to kind of feel what you felt in that moment. And I'm not your therapist. I'm not going to say how did that make you feel, But so you're in this room, and what was the climate of the room like? You say I'm from Lockwood. I live in Lockwood right now, and even though I work at Bank of America, like what was that room like? I mean, was it a hushed whisper, or was it what was that like? Because I think it's very important to become what you are.
I think that, so to describe the room, it was all a cheery feeling. It was a great conversation. When you walk into any business, you're bringing people together and we're talking technology. It's the icebreaker. How do we get to know each other, and how do we kind of build that cohesiveness in the onstart? So the icebreaker is always important. We're talking about golf. We're talking about, hey, what did you do last night? But that conversation created the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And for me, I was living it because I saw the reality of the community at the time. I woke up to it. I had just left it an hour later, and the community wasn't bad. It was just crime, and people had stopped the characteristic of what we call community had changed to a mindset of the hood. I tell people community is a way of life, hood is a state of mind. And we've got to change that state of mind and build that way of life. So I was waking up to a state of mind that people said was the hood. And in that room, when they said that, for me, it was a flashback moment, and I had to make a big choice. It was, do I tell my colleagues, the guy who's about to lead this meeting, that I came from that neighborhood that they just saw that they considered to be a dangerous situation? Or do I tell the truth that, I live there, now I got to go back and change that? So that room went through a hush phase. It was got real quiet for a second, and it was a reality moment for me. But I think I gained the respect of my teammates because I told the truth.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that's a hard truth to tell when you're sitting in that room. This would make a great movie, by the way.
Hey, look,
that's next.
that's
Martingly, we see you over there. Anyway.
That's coming.
Yeah, man, gosh, it's just incredible. I feel like when you're personally impacted by something, it becomes a lot more real to you, because there's neighborhoods that are not so nice in the United States, but when they're using that as kind of the example for you, I'm sure that kind of opened your eyes, like, I got to do something about this.
What's actually funny, most people would have said, I need to move.
Well, yeah.
And instead, you were like, I'm just going
mean,
to change the whole community and make it nice.
Yeah. I think you believe, and something we were discussing before this, though, is that you obviously believe in people because, if you have this crime-ridden area, you must believe in your heart that people aren't trying to do bad stuff and be bad people and stuff. It's just that maybe that's the way that they get by or whatever. So how do you? Christian's the type of person that will talk about things from a grand scheme. You went from here to there, amazing, right? But I want to talk about some of the steps, okay? Yeah. So you go home, Lockwood, and you say, all right, I got to do something about this. What was your next step? Like, how did you get to the next piece?
Well, I'll tell you, before I go there, the mindset was part of it. Because, again, I'm a 22 years retired veteran, military. So I had learned tactical.
How are you?
He's like 72 and he's just...
How old are you?
Well, I'm a little bit over 40. But
okay.
I went in the Guard, so I did the Guard. So I was able to go in the Guard. Again, my story is a little bit different, and I want to talk about the mindset because I was born mentally. They labeled me as being mentally retarded.
Wow.
So they put me in resource classes for 7 years of my life and told me that I would never learn like the average kid. So for me, I've always looked at people to try and figure out the glass is always full. So I'm always looking for the opportunity, the goodness in people. So when it comes to community, I'm always looking for the positive sides. I try and never see the negative. And so when you looked at, when you asked that question, the mindset and how you morphed into it, when I went back to that community, two things happened. One was I walked through that community and I realized the problems. And it's the problems that we see in businesses and communities. That community wasn't a bad community. It had just lost financial, social, and family disconnects. Now you take those three things in a business or in anyone's life, you disconnect you from your friends. What happens? You fall apart.
Yeah.
Financially, you take away the financial concept, your ability to have access to finances, you fall apart. And then the most key thing is social aspects. Being able to interchange and interlock with people. When those three things fall apart, communities fall apart. And I never forget, I went to the HOA meeting, and we were sitting there, and the HOA meeting was like 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
I was the fourth.
Right.
But it was 3 old ladies, and they were passionate about community. They showed up, and they were telling a story about how bad the crime was. And their solution was to go in and bolt the windows down on all the houses. And so I was like, wait a minute. So if you're...
Seems like the wrong message, you know?
These 3 old ladies, if you go inside the house and bolt your windows down, if the house caught on fire, how are you going to get out?
Right.
And I said, wait a minute, this is not the community I grew up in. I grew up in South Carolina in a unique community. We didn't have a whole lot. We were poor, but not poor-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And but we had a sense of pride. And there's no way you're going to tell me that your solution is to bolt the windows down. We've got to do something. So when I walked out of that meeting, my life changed because I knew that just like anything, you either going to talk about a solution or you're going to be a part of that solution. And I wanted to be a part of it. So I had to be creative. And so I found out all the stakeholders and people that wanted to be a part of that community. And I said, let's do one thing. Let's change the narrative. we've got to focus on changing the narrative, and not tomorrow, but now. And so we did something that was off the wall. Again, if you want to change anything, you've got to interject something that's different. I was talking about it earlier, and we found our connection.
Which is wild. Isn't that amazing, though? Like, I can't tell you how many times we've been sitting across from people on this show, this cast, or at a business meeting or whatever. It's like, dude, you look familiar. And then, sure enough, I mean, it's been all sorts of things, whether it was business or work or anything. But anyway, please continue. I just think it's amazing. Yeah.
No, that's powerful. 6 degrees separation. I mean,
Yep.
I love to read. And so we did something that was different. The article had just came out, Charlotte Observer. Again, the top 25 most dangerous neighborhood to live in America was Lockwood. It's still there. The article's still out there. And I said, what can we do now to change this narrative? And I believe in God, and talks to me in dreams. And I said, let's do a 5K, but let's do something different. The community was 98% Afro-American, 1% Caucasian, 2% Caucasian. And so what I did was, hey, let's go to the music factory. We had just had open up, and let's do a 5K, but let's do something different. Let's do a 5K rock and run, a rock band concert in the middle of a marginalized community. Everybody said, hands down, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. We just came out of 2008, which was a recession. There's no way. We're not going to fund it. The first year we had a little bit over 500 runners in that race, and I think that was a great start for the race. And it was a huge win. And we ran through that neighborhood, and I asked them one question on WSO TV. I said, what do you guys think about the race? We love the route. We love the race. Thank you. You just ran through what they labeled as the top 25 most dangerous neighborhood, and you just changed the narrative. So now we can become a community. And that was the start of the change of that community.
It's incredible how something like that, you're talking about racial relations and things like that. And I think that, the media spins a different narrative with the relationships between races and cultures for that point. But I think that, as people, we have to. Well, the thing that I've always said is that we're so much more alike than we are different. Our blood is red. I mean, on the inside, we're 98% the same. The color of our skin's a little different, but that's just the way that we were born. We didn't have a choice in that. And then you bring something like this that everybody can enjoy. Everybody likes rock and roll, man. I mean, that's just a fact of life. And you bring it to a community where, I'm sure there's people in all walks of life that are on that run. There's people that can barely afford the entry fee for the run. There's people that can pay everybody's type of thing and not have a bead of sweat on their brow. But the thing that you've said that I find particularly impactful is that you have to change the narrative and do something outside of the box, something that's unique. And I think that was a part of the magic of it, because Christian and I both knew that before we knew you, I guess you could say. But you have to do something unique that kind of showcases that. And I'm sure as some of these people are running through this area, they might think, we got to do something about fixing this up and changing it and making it a little better. And lo and behold, that's exactly what's happened in that area.
That was the concept. It was, how do I get people that had never been to, because we label things before we even know it. You've never been to this area, but yet you'll say it's a bad area.
Right.
So what happened was, I wanted people that had never been to the area to come experience the area and see, hey, it's not as bad as they say it is, and you could be a part of that change.
Yep.
And so the people that ran through the neighborhood saw the value of the neighborhood they were running in, but the people in the neighborhood saw the value of that neighborhood as well, and they appreciated what they had. And then the young guy who became my vice president was a Caucasian, and we partnered and we built the fabric of diversity for that community. And you drive through it today, it's a diverse community that's growing. That's now, in I think 2010 was labeled as the fastest gentrifying neighborhood in America.
Wow.
By value, not by displacement. By value, I want to be clear, not by value, not by displacement. So we had done something that I think was iconic, and that became a template and a model that people can look at and say it works.
Yep.
And it was built on diversity of two people from two different backgrounds coming together, culminating stakeholders, and rebuilding the fabric of a community. And that's how I launched out with eFix Housing Solutions.
Wow. That's such an incredible story. So Christian's the idea man. So I already know where he wants to go with this conversation. But What do you think for the future? Lockwood's well on its way. Do you have a community? And you don't have to tell us on air or anything, but do you have a community in mind for where you want to impact next? And what's your ideas? I mean, I want to know I want the inside scoop. What kind of thing you want to develop for that?
Well,
You can keep it secret.
It's
if you
already
want.
happening. It's
Yeah.
fine. And people said, our eFix housing started in Lockwood. We got into buying and renovating homes. We never said we want to flip houses. That's not our model. How do we go and we stabilize communities was our mission, and it was started off of one core value. I will never put someone in a house that my grandma would live in, and Lord, I love my grandma. So,
That's perfect. That's perfect.
That was my slogan. If
Yeah.
you asked me what was the tagline for our company, that was it. And I told people, you're not going to move into a house that my grandma wouldn't live in, and we wanted to make sure that when you walk into the house, you had a home. Now, the community at that time wasn't what we wanted it to be, but together we could work and change the community. So what I did was I partnered with all of our tenants, and we call them family members. And what we did was we said a part of you getting a high renovated home was that we give you a quality renovated home at a low rental rate, but you had to actually become part of the HOA, the neighborhood association, and that basically tied them to the community, and it worked. It just worked. So now at neighborhood association meetings, they were all there. They were
There's
all
more than 4
validated.
people now.
Yeah, there's a lot more than 4 people.
Yep.
And so what we did next was, and so now today we're now branching out to the west side. So we're doing a lot of stuff on Bates Road, and so our company grew a little bit over 100 homes. I tell people now that it's funny that all of our homes are less than a mile and a half from each other, so you could reach all of our homes on a high-powered motor scooter on a half battery life.
Yeah.
You can get to every home that we own, and that's unique because it's part of our strategic model. But it benefited because now we're able to stabilize and grow communities, and we're now doing a lot of work on the west side, west end of Charlotte, and that's how I got into commercial, by going over to the west end and having God give me another dream and saying, hey, look, I want to get in commercial. And I tell you, when you ask God for something, Habakkuk 2:2 and James 4:2, you have not because you ask not. And you start to realize I asked God to get in commercial, and He brought me 2 commercial buildings, and now those 2 buildings are now changing the scape of the West End corridor. And so now I spend more time now doing eFix Development Corp., which is our commercial arm. So we still do the management of our residential component, but we're now focused a lot more on the commercial side. And again, God gave me a blessing, but He said that the blessing is not for you; it's what I do through you.
Wow, that's incredible. What do I even say after that? You're making me speechless over here. So when you're talking about the nuts and bolts of things, it's one thing to have a dream. And in our company, Christian's the dreamer. His head. We like to say it like this: Christian's head's always up in the sky, and I'm always firmly planted on earth, reaching up and trying to grab him down to make sure that he's still around, type of thing.
That.
Yeah. You and Christian have a lot in common, believe me. So when it comes to organizing people, getting them together, let's take the run and the Music Factory, for instance. You knew what you wanted to do. What were your steps in order to execute that? Like, did you have a strategy involved with that, or what can you tell people that are looking to get involved and do things like this?
The first thing I tell people, and I teach my mentees, I do a lot of inspirational. I'm an inspirational speaker, so I like to motivate people, but I like to inspire you more. And I tell people the first thing is you've got to have a great why. Develop that why. Know who you are and why you're doing it. My commitment wasn't just do a 5K; it was about rebuilding a community. So even if the 5K didn't do well, my goal was I want to rebuild this community. But when it works, you got a culmination of a great thing. So your why has to be great. Second, you got to have passion. People don't invest in you because they like you. They invest because they see the passion in you. And so I'm very passionate about what I do. And I talked to everyone. I was telling everybody, we're going to do a 5K. And they all told me no. So I went to B of A, and we're not going to sponsor. We're not going to sponsor. Okay, I'll sponsor. We'll make it happen. So you got to be passionate about it. And then third is the most important thing is building the right team. If you don't do anything else, you've got to focus on how do I build the right team to make sure that we're going to execute. You got to have that why component. You got to have the compassion, because if you don't have those two pieces, that team's not gonna. They're gonna jive. They may come and be a part of something, but when the work gets hard and you don't have a why and a passion, it kind of fizzles out. And that's the same I tell people when I build my businesses. I really focus on my why, my passion, and then my team. And I value my team. I had a great team. Hired a marketing company, the main event, and we got together. And I think at the beginning they believed in the mission of the community piece, but they didn't see the 5K piece.
Right.
And in a few conversations of selling, I get it. I really get it. And that was them seeing my why and my passion. And then it went from that to going to sponsors and groups and saying, guys, I know you may not get this piece, but how do we drive this community to make sure it's a community everyone wants to live, work, and play in? And we can make this happen. And after a while, people got the vision. And when I said the rock, we're going to spend 2 months touring rock band concerts to find the right artists that could come in and really bring energy, because I didn't want a 5K that people were just going to come and run. No, I wanted you to come and rock out. I wanted the amplifiers. I wanted the high pitch. I wanted everything, because we needed something that was going to invoke change in what we were doing.
He was forced to tour rock band concerts.
Yeah, you were forced to.
No. Man, look, I have pictures. I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah. It's Christian and I. We had it just reminds me of a silly story of ours, but we were at a business meeting, and after the fact, we were having a drink, and we were on a rooftop in Charlotte, and we see this gorgeous sunset and everything, and Christian looks over at me and he says, we just had to do this for our business. And I said, you know what? Life ain't so bad, man. Life ain't so bad. So we're about to have to sign off here. But before we do, I like to speak not only about who you are and what you've done and things like that, but I like to speak sort of to the person that's sitting at home and they want to invoke change, or they want to do something like what you've done. And I believe that success leaves clues. So is there anything that you'd say to somebody that's wanting to kind of take the steps to do what you have done? Like, what advice or inspiration, motivation would you give them?
I'd say first, again, I don't push religion, but I'd say believe in something higher than yourself. I believe in God. He's the head of my life. Second, build that why so big that no matter what comes against you, that your why will always overcome it. And then for me, moving into commercial, we're now a pioneer in the Baseball Road Corridor, which is another marginalized community, and never be afraid to be first. Now, Steve already talked about taking that leap, because they're growing wings, and you're going to get a lot of bumps and bruises. I've gotten a lot of bumps and bruises, but I've learned so much. I had a dream about going into deep when I got into commercial. And the funny thing about it is, before I'd done well in developing residential housing, we've done over 200 plus renovations, but I had never been on a commercial site. I had never seen a commercial blueprint, never went for financing for a commercial building. And here it is, God is now giving me 2 buildings at the same time to develop, and everyone says you can't do it. Then we say, and this in the marginalized community is not going to work, and we made it happen. We've made history. We've totally revitalized and rebuilt the perception again of what community means. So to someone sitting at home, I never take no for an answer, and you can't define who I'm going to become because you don't own the box, because I'm not inside of a box. So, and your biggest, and this is me talking to that person at home right now that is sitting and saying, I can't do it. Your biggest hindrance or biggest demotivator is the person that you will face in the mirror in the morning. If you tell that person you can't do something, trust me, they'll believe it. But if you tell them that they're great and that today is the start of the future that you want to become, I promise you, you'll see that future.
I love it. That's my every morning right there. I wake up.
That's what we need. That's
look
what we
in the
need.
mirror. I'm like, get amped.
There's something to that. There's something to that. I believe that. Well, they call it like self-fulfilling prophecy, where who you look at the mirror and say that you are is who you are ultimately, And I'm a big Tom Brady fan, even though I'm even though I'm Carolina Panthers.
Tom Brady
Get this on camera. I'm Carolina Panthers always and
now
forever.
Now that they won a game,
but hey, no, I'm Carolina Panthers always and forever. But
keep pounding,
but
right?
hey, that's my jam. But I'm also a huge Tom Brady fan, and you'll have to watch this if you hadn't seen it. But there's a new commercial with him and Morgan Freeman. And Morgan Freeman has that perfect chocolatey voice, and it says, "This letter is for you," and it goes in, and the story behind this, it's a true story. Whether Under Armour did this for a promotion or whatever, but it's a true story because there's footage of it. But he writes this letter to this high school kid who is a quarterback, and the letter says, he says, "I hear you're supposed to be the next Tom Brady. You're not. You're not the next Tom Brady. You're the next you." And he goes in and he says, "Don't worry about what they say." He says, when you get drafted in the 5th round, 199th pick, store it away, And anyway, I thought it was a great commercial, very impactful type of thing.
That's very impactful, and that's the one thing I tell people all the time: never take the no, man.
Mm-hmm.
No's are great motivators.
Sure.
Because a yes coming.
Right.
And I've been told no so many times, and I've proven them all wrong.
Yep.
So
yeah,
very good.
It's wild. It's wild. Like when you said what you said, I was sitting there like, man, that's exactly how my story started with this business. Because like I told like 6 or 7 people that I was starting a marketing firm 6 years ago, and they were like, "You can't do that. You don't know anything about marketing." I was like, "Sure, but I can," And then I was like, I'm just gonna. I probably got like 9 people that said like, no. I didn't get a single like you should do that really.
Exactly.
And then I just did it. Now we have a great team. We've been in business. We have so many customers that trust us with all of their high level marketing.
And I'm gonna tell you, just sitting around when I walked in and met you guys, man, I saw not only passion, but I saw how businesses should operate as far as the energy in the room. You guys brought so much energy, and just off the podcast conversation with so much energy and welcoming, and I thank you for that. And if people don't know you, they should get to know you guys.
Yeah, and he's saying that with
that.
us being 10 minutes late, by the way. So he's being very, very kind.
I wasn't 10 minutes late. Well, I'll leave you with this. That is unfortunately a part of being best friends and business co-owners. So
or fortunate,
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is fortunate, but we have this joke. And we'll sign off with this.
I'll
tell
ask
the joke.
A funny question.
Oh, I always try to ask a funny. This is me stalling right here, by the way. I'll come up with it. So my joke is like this: being best friends with your business partner is a very, very strange thing because when we fight, and I mean we fight, and it'll be 4:30. Oh my God, you suck! You're so stupid, and I mean it's like it's a fight,
It's not that
and
bad.
then 5:01 comes around. It's like, hey man, you want to do dinner later? Okay, so funny question. Oh man, I stalled as long as I could, and I still got nothing. I gotta stop doing this because I can never come up with the right funny question.
Well, you're moving into the
thank God.
you said the west side, is that right?
West Bays Road, West End.
Okay. So what's the out of box thing you're gonna do there?
So the out of box thing we're doing different, man, is that we're now not only building dreams through housing, we're building dreams through commercial, and I have a vision that the 4 corners of Bays Road and LaSalle, I want to make people look at those 4 corners as McAdamville, a place that you have to come visit and see. And we did something that was unique. We brought charging stations to a marginalized community. And people are like, why do you need a charging station on Bays Road? The question isn't why you need one, is why don't you have one? Because if we talk about pushing people into the future, that's the future.
Mm-hmm.
So the out-of-box thing for me is, how do I embrace this community and bring things to this community that will push it forward, drive the culture, but create it as a community that's strong because the people who live there, work there, and invest there. And I'm just happy to be a part of it.
So when you do stuff like that, I'm just curious, are you doing it on purpose to drive traffic that can invest in the community?
No.
Or is it more about the future mindset?
I do it to try and change the narrative. It has nothing to do with investments, because I believe that if you create the environment, people will come.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that you create environments that can drive the culture and stability. We have to be very intentional about development.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing, the model of eFix Development Corp, we have 3 pillars: community engagement, art infusion, and small business development. Those are 3 things I live by. As long as we can do those 3 things, we can build commercial and residential opportunities that will cause communities to grow.
Yeah. And all of his things are so passionate and stuff. I can't even think of something funny.
I
I'm
know.
trying to like grab something funny. I think we're just gonna sign off with no funny.
No funny.
Do you have a funny question?
No jokes. Martingly, you got a funny question?
Spot too.
Yeah. It's hard to think
Behind
about.
the scenes, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
A funny question.
Why didn't I charge the,
If you
the
could
other
use
camera? That would be a funny
if
question.
you could use one filter on Chris, what would you do?
If I could use one filter
Oh,
on Chris,
What would you use?
Time out.
That-
You can text it to me if you
that's a
want.
great one.
okay, it's like a funny question, but not a funny question. What is the worst investment you ever made?
What is the worst investment you've ever made?
What's your biggest bruise?
Wow.
His time on this podcast.
Worst time investment.
That content management company that I.
Yeah. Brutal.
The worst investment I ever made, but it was the best investment, was I ended up going to, well, I'm going to say it two ways. One way is the fact that I want to invest in, invest in yourself. So I complained to my mentor about a course that I paid for, and it was only $4,000. Not like that's not a lot of money. It wasn't a lot of money at the time to me. It was I didn't have the money, but I didn't want to pay it. But when I got there, the knowledge he imparted in me showed me that I had been losing $15,000 a year.
Wow.
Because of how I was dealing with my insurance on my properties.
Wow.
So that was the best investment I made, but it was the worst investment because I didn't understand the power of that investment at the time.
Wow.
So
I see.
And I tell people, if you don't invest in yourself, you're already setting demise for yourself. So by investing that $4,000 a month, that $4,000 for that event and that learning opportunity, it saved me $15,000 a year. But I thought I was doing the wrong thing. I was like, "There's
Didn't
no
know.
way I'm paying this."
You weren't grateful for it. You didn't understand it. Yeah.
And
Oh well, I understand that. So you
it
learned
was
from it.
hard, man.
Yeah.
I learned so much, and I tell anybody, invest in yourself. Invest in education without application is horrible. But the moment you become educated and you learn how to apply it, you become powerful. And that day I became powerful.
Yeah.
Because if I hadn't paid it, I don't think I'd be here.
Wow. I think we'll sign off with this, and we'll talk about this more off air. But
Over steaks.
Over steaks. Yes, that sounds great. Anyway, they got me thinking about steak now. But I think that some of life's best learning lessons are the ones that are most expensive. So
Yes.
I think a lot of we'll talk about this off air, but I think a lot of the most expensive mistakes that you make oftentimes the best learning lessons. Chris, thank you so much for joining us, man. I can't wait till this podcast posts with mostly your face because I forgot to charge that camera, so that's a whole nother situation. But it'll be good from
We'll
there.
have the
But-
audio of us and the face of you.
That's right.
Hey,
That's
the
right.
face of business
Love,
legends.
Yep.
love. E-Fix Development Corp.
That's right. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.